Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to Forza Motorsport. Finally, after what feels like absolutely forever, we've had a proper dive into the gameplay, showing off the initial races within Forza Motorsport, and I'm here today to finally give you my opinion on it. Now, it's been a long time since I've actually spoken about Forza Motorsport. It's not that I'm not interested, it's just, you know, there's been just more tidbits of information than really seeing anything concrete until now, at least. We've obviously had the announcement of the track list, which is 20 tracks, and yeah, it's not a bad list so far. We've obviously had the announcement of some sort of post-launch support with the likes of the Nordschleife being added after release, and I believe in something like spring of 2024, so at least there is kind of that support post-launch for this game, and it isn't just going to be kind of shelved off and completely forgotten about. And this is one thing that these games are actually fairly decent at, is post-launch support, but that'll be for another video. Let me give you my initial thoughts on, well, what we saw, the initial gameplay of Forza Motorsport. So what did we actually see in terms of this trailer? Well, it was the initial races or introduction of the game. This is essentially what you're going to be seeing as soon as you boot up this game. Now, the first thing I do want to touch on, and maybe it's just me that's noticed this, but it's actually the camera and the way it looks like the car's actually handling. A lot of the talk was around the kind of physics and the way the cars feel, and that they're going to be, you know, the best they've ever been, and it does seem like the gameplay actually backs this up. One of my biggest criticisms with Forza Motorsport 7 the first time I ever played it was just how much it kind of presented itself as a pretty much arcade racing game. Now, these games have always been simcade. They're not full-blown sims, but they're not arcade races either, and I felt like the way they went and presented Forza Motorsport 7, and, you know, that ridiculous camera angle that shakes about 1,000,000 miles per hour and makes it look really aggressive and cool, just kind of lended itself to something more along the lines of the likes of the grid games more than an actual Forza Motorsport game. And it does seem like they've kind of turned it down with the latest Forza Motorsport. Yes, it's still a very awesome and dynamic camera, but it certainly lends itself to being more of a simcade look than a arcade look that we got for Forza Motorsport 7, and this is a massive plus point, and I really like the look of the direction. Like I said, a lot of the talk was on the physics and the cars and it being a better feeling game than it's ever been, and it does seem like the gameplay actually does make it look that way, at least in terms of the overall feel and look of what we're seeing. It seems like all of the cars are behaving as you'd actually expect them, with road cars being road cars and, well, like this Cadillac in the background, race cars being race cars. And this is going to bring us into another cool little feature, a look at the pit stops and really how they're going to work. In terms of the animations, they do actually look fantastic. I really can't complain. As you can see, we've got the Cadillac going in, and one of the coolest features of this trailer is when the Cadillac kind of turns over from hybrid to obviously the typical sort of petrol power, and you go from that kind of buzz of the electric to the growl of the petrol motor kicking in. In terms of the pit stops and the visuals and the looks, they've absolutely nailed it. Now let's have a quick look and a talk about the gameplay of the Cadillac itself. This is obviously one of the Le Mans hypercars, or LMDH, whichever category it falls in. I always forget exactly which one it is, but it is looking good. Like I said, the behavior of the car, well, it's behaving exactly as you'd expect. And another cool feature is the multi-class racing you're seeing here. As you can tell, well, this car isn't in the same class as the likes of the sort of GTE cars that we're seeing scattered across the grid, and I really do like that. Another thing, looking at the lap count, it is looking like it's going to tend itself to bringing in some of those longer races where we do rely on getting obviously tires, fuel and all that good stuff. It is looking like a fairly solid game. There's no denying that. It's looking like it's kind of took the elements that we want to see within Forza Motorsport, and whilst not being a insanely brutally realistic game, it's still bringing over enough authenticity that it's got the likes of fuel, tyre wear, longer races, multi-class and more. It's looking like the racing portion side away from the road cars is shaping up to be absolutely fantastic. But this is going to lead me on to probably one of the things that I actually found very underwhelming about a lot of this trailer, and that is actually graphically. Whilst there's no denying it is a good looking game, maybe it's just me or maybe it's just the way YouTube compresses videos, but a lot of this is genuinely looking quite washed out. It's looking not as graphically stunning as I half expected it to. Now, don't get me wrong, this is, like you can see at the bottom, a preview development build, meaning that it is not the final product. But in terms of what we saw originally within some of the trailers, it looked visually stunning. Now, there is the whole fanboy talk around Forza Motorsport models being absolutely terrible and outdated, and all of this kind of built from the ground up stuff. And whilst I do agree in some lengths that, look, these car models are still outdated and still left in the past, you know, a lot of it is looking visually good, but maybe just not on the level that I actually expected. Don't get me wrong, that's not saying it's a bad looking game, but in terms of the visuals that I'm actually seeing during this trailer, they just look completely washed out at times. It just isn't looking up to the level that I actually expected. But overall, still a decent looking game, but just not quite there in terms of you know, being a full-blown visual powerhouse. However, like I said, this could be due to YouTube's compression of the video, or it could just be due to the fact that it is not the final build. Again, good looking, but not absolutely on the level I expected it to be. So we've had a look at the two poster child of this game, obviously being the Corvette C8 E-Ray, and obviously a look at the Cadillac LMDH, both looking absolutely awesome. Sound design also seeming very, very strong. And now we're going to move into what will probably be the base starter part, where, you know, you've done your introduction, you've had a look at road cars, you've had a look at race cars, but now we've got to go ahead and not only look at our character, but choose our starter car. And to be honest, it looks fairly decent. Obviously, we're going to get a, you know, nice look at this crisp looking Cadillac, but then as you can see, we now have our driver appearing. Now, a lot of the emphasis on this game was, you know, going through a full-blown career mode. You know, there's kind of the journey from the bottom to the top, and well, it seems like this is an improvement. This is definitely something that's been very critical of the Forza series, that both Horizon and Motorsport in recent times have just kind of handed you the keys to almost anything almost instantly, but it's definitely been dialed back at least a bit. As you can see, we've got the Builders Cup here in the background, which is essentially your starter cup. We've got some, while still very powerful cars and definitely no slouch, some more, you know, I guess grassroots cars. We've got the likes of the Subaru, Mustang, Honda Civic Type R. You know, it does seem like there is a decent selection of starter cars, and well, obviously we're going to go ahead and pick one of them. Now, the one that you end up seeing in the gameplay is going to be that Civic Type R, but we can get now a nice look at the likes of ray tracing, reflections, and all that stuff. And well, this is where the visuals actually look fantastic. Again, when it's in motion, and again, it could be due to the YouTube's compression and stuff, it looks washed out. But when we're seeing it actually kind of in the flesh, the car models do look a much better than, you know, they do in game. So with the starter car picked, it is time to finally move into the event, well, using the starter car. So this is what to expect from the, I guess, start of the game. Again, we've had the introduction, we've looked at the kind of main hero cars of this game, we've had a quick look at the sort of driver focus bit where you're looking at customizing and picking your driver, and we've also had a decent look at the starter cars. So we're moving on to Grand Oak Raceway. This is going to be the club circuit. It does seem like the whole theme of, you know, the Builders Cup being sort of a, you know, I guess club level race event is kind of being carried over. We're obviously racing on club circuits, which are typically shorter circuits. Now, one thing I do actually like about this is the fact that once you're in the event, it's not a case of just jumping in and getting it done. You do seem to be able to, you know, do the likes of tuning your car, picking your fuel load, doing practice, you know, instead of just having to go through sort of a checklisty event list. It does seem that if you want to spend a bit of time even in the early events, that you can go ahead and do that. And I really do like that they're doing this with this game. It means that the events do feel like they've got at least a bit of meaning to them, that although you're starting off at the bottom, you can still properly fine-tune your driving style, get the practice in, and just overall get used to the game in these early stages, which I genuinely really do like. Now it's on to what we can see here, a bit of practice and all that kind of stuff. We've got some objectives in the bottom: required, complete 3 laps; bonus, complete a lap in 1 minute 4.96 or faster. Again, you're already getting targets thrown at you, which I genuinely do like. We also get a quick look here at the car level. Now this is again something that I'm going to quickly talk about. So the whole car PG progression, I actually like this idea. I know a lot of people don't. They don't like the idea of sort of, you know, sticking with a car and getting used to it. And I think a way to actually make this work better would have been to actually do it for the manufacturer itself and put more levels to it. But at the same time, I kind of wouldn't want that. I'd want it to be based on that specific car. It's, whilst at the same time, padding the game out in a way, it also feels rewarding that you're actually having to spend time with these cars. And there is I believe, like over 500 cars in this game. So yes, that's a lot of hours if you want to focus on these cars. But again, it gives each car a sense of purpose and meaning in the game. So I genuinely am a fan of this whole kind of car PG progression. I really can't criticize it. Yes, it might seem like artificially inflating the game, but at the same time, it does give meaning to the cars. A lot of racing games fail to do this. They're all good putting these shiny models in and making them look as good as possible, but there's no meaning to that car in the game. A lot of cars will just go completely ignored. One of my main criticisms of the likes of Forza Horizon is, in terms of, the sheer amount of cars in that game, I probably use mainly just 20 to 30 at most, with others just not getting a look in. This is again taking a criticism of the series, although this is a motorsport game and not a Horizon game. The point still stands. There is meaningful progression to each individual car in this game. Whether you see that as padding, well, that's up to you to make your own idea. Now we can also see that the rewind feature is back, again lending itself to the accessibility of the Forza series. Now a lot of people do criticize these games for having that, but to be honest, look, these games are there to be accessible while still having enough depth to, kind of lend themselves to being a full-blown simcade game. That's the whole point of a simcade racer, being accessible enough for people to jump in and sell it to a mass audience, but without the need of, kind of suffering in terms of its overall handling and feel, and giving the cars enough depths. Now in terms of the AI, as we can see, another thing I do like to note is that the fact that the AI can make mistakes. Now this is for me a great thing. It does seem, whilst the AI is not maybe necessarily the smartest or gonna battle you all the time, it does seem that they do have a bit of personality, in the fact that, well, they can go wrong. Again, just kind of adds to the fact that these tracks seem to be a bit more alive even at these early stages, and especially whilst you're in something like the Builders Cup, where it is again grassroots. It's great to see these lower level drivers with you also kind of making mistakes that you're probably going to do in the early game as well. So I genuinely do like what I'm seeing. So with all this really kind of showing off, and with practice coming to an end here, let's go and dive into, well, the main race. So let's skip a little bit forward. We're going to kind of skip out the whole end of practice stuff. There's not really too much to see that we haven't already seen. However, let's straight away note the car count. Even in these club events, we have a 24 car count. Again, in terms of the event, you can see this is overall a shorter event. We're already gaining car levels, which is nice to see compared to, what we're doing on track. So if we get decent overtakes, or we're doing well in a section of the track, we're going to earn that XP for that specific car, so we can properly see it working in action. Again, as you can see, it goes up quite quick, but it does mean that we're actually having to use these cars. I really do like that. And then once again, these club level events are looking like a typical club level or grassroots event that you'd actually see. For me personally, I go to the track quite a bit, and kind of more at the national level or more amateur level, you will see a lot of drivers making some very silly mistakes, and it does seem that the AI is carrying that over here. Yes, they don't look the cleverest, yes, they don't look like they're going to absolutely battle you to the death, but certainly, once again, like I said, it's adding personality and depth to the AI. They are willing to make mistakes. You're going to have cars bundling in corners and, completely wiping each other out. It does seem like overall this is a decent way to, kind of show off the game. And in terms of that car count, well, I can't complain. 24 cars in the first, event is a very solid look at it. This is going to be the intro event to the game once you've done the introduction. So overall, what are my final thoughts on this game? Is it shaping up to be decent? Well, if I kind of take the criticisms what other creators have said in terms of the wheel and force feedback, it maybe needs a bit of work on that end. But if I'm taking it from a proper gameplay perspective and, what's actually being on show, then, well, it doesn't look too shabby at all, to be quite honest. It looks like Forza Motorsport is in many ways returning to form. Again, in terms of the sort of the marketing nonsense around built from the ground up, there does seem like there is still a few lacking car models that hopefully Turn 10 will go back and update, hopefully before the final build, but maybe at a bit of a later time. But I don't necessarily expect this. overall, in terms of the graphics and, you know, one of the main talking points, ray tracing and all the reflections, it looks decent, but definitely maybe not on the level that I actually expected it to be. But that's no way saying that it's a bad looking game. It just certainly feels like it was kind of over talked in terms of, you know, that part of the game. But visually, it's fine. You know, it's not perfect, it's good looking, but it's not anything in terms of a world beater. Now, there is a lot to take away and a lot that I genuinely do like that I've seen. In terms of the gameplay, it looks solid. Again, it's lending itself being to more of a simcade game rather than that whole arcade aesthetic that Forza Motorsport 7 always just seemed to give me when I actually played the game. So yeah, it does certainly seem like a step up. It seems like this franchise is actually being rebooted in a decent way, and I'm genuinely excited to see the final product. So overall, not too shabby at all. So decent from turn 10. Again, maybe just turn down the marketing waffle, because to be quite honest, a lot of it, well, is again just marketing, and I don't necessarily like that. Do you talking with your gameplay? Because what I'm seeing from a gameplay perspective is overall pretty damn solid. So that's my final thoughts. I will be checking out Forza Motorsport when it finally releases. I'll be checking it out on the early access as well. So don't forget to tune in from the release date of the early access to see myself obviously playing this game and finally getting my hands on it, and then I will update my initial thoughts from there onwards. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.